said, I'm always excited to talk about as an artist as well as a business coach. And there are four essential topics. I know some of those are collaborative because we talked about them prior to this workshop, Madeline. But I want to address today four key areas. Number one, I want to address business setup essentials, such as your business classification, your organization structure for your business. I want to look at some of the tax basics. It's important to note as a disclaimer at this point, when we say the word tax, I am not an accountant. I am just a very good business-minded musician who believes in protecting myself and therefore adding this other layer to each of you to protect yourselves also. But I'd like to talk about some of those deductible expenses. We're also going to look at some tools. I'm going to give you a couple of recommendations for that. And finally, my favorite topic, which is banking. I've spent the last 15 years, well, not the last 15 years, but over 15 years of being a banker where my specialty was small business. So everything from credit, structure, and repair to helping small businesses get the financing and the funding that they deserved. I think Jen was a part of one of the workshops I gave where I told the story of a business owner who came into my bank once with his business plan written out on a napkin. After a conversation that we had, he went and sat in a coffee shop overnight and came back with a business plan that landed him $250,000 in startup capital. So that is the kind of thing that I do. I bring a lot of passion and a lot of overall good energy. I'm passionate about artists in particular because oftentimes we don't think credit options are the options for us. We always go and look to grants, and many of us don't know that grants are taxable income. So you're still back in the same situation that you were in if you were applying for a credit product with a bank. So I want to kind of just talk about those four key areas. And I want to start off with setting up your business and some things that you should be looking for when it comes to those areas. I want to just give you a few highlights, and I want to say that musicians tend to leave an awful lot of money on the table every year. Now, this reason runs the gamut. I've heard musicians say, I just don't know what to do, so I just keep working the gigs and I'm praying that Uncle Sam won't come to find me. Uncle Sam's going to find you. So I'm hoping that today's workshop will change that thinking, but it's also important to know that oftentimes there are refunds that are owed to us as artists. There's jobs that we worked before we converted to a full-time model as a musician or whatever our art field is, and we never went back to claim those refunds. And particularly this upcoming tax season, it will be important for us to think about our tax returns more than ever because you know that there have been several stimulus checks over the last year that have been given, and some of that money will come through how you proceed with your tax returns. I also want to share that musicians aren't always conscious about how much money they actually have. I had a conversation a couple of nights ago. I was in a workshop and there was a pianist there, amazing pianist, and I asked him, how much money is on the table? How much do you think you make every single year? And he gave me a couple of different thoughts around what he thought he made. But the funny thing is the moment I asked him, okay, how much do you charge clients? He actually knew what that was to the penny. He knew exactly how much he charges clients. And it turns out he's several years behind. There's inflation, there are costs, especially supply costs that have accumulated since we've been in this time of COVID. So he was a little outdated with his pricing strategy, and he had made some money in other areas that he had counted. So he thought his annual income was about $40,000. In actuality, it was about $80,000. And I have to tell you that this is not an uncommon theme. I can't tell you how many times I've talked with artists who think that they are actually making a certain amount of money because it never seems to land in their pockets. But the reality of it is that there is a substantial amount of money that they're accumulating through their work. So we want to talk about that. And then this is why that brings me to the deductions portion of it, as well as mileage, because the more you deduct, the more you will see in the long run in terms of what's available to you in the end. I also want to highlight the fact that musicians don't always formalize themselves as a business, and therefore they lose. Most times we work as independent contractors and gig workers, but we are losing a lot because that puts us in a category of a personal tax return when we don't formalize our business. So the idea that we consider today the process of formalizing that business model, what that will do for our tax returns will be substantial. Not to mention that when you formalize yourself as a business, you're also protecting yourself. So we'll talk about that a little bit more. And then finally, I don't know about you guys, but I'm not so sure about this NFT age of the digital currency. I know a lot of my artist friends are interested in it. I saw that our president yesterday is planning to make some new rules around cryptocurrency, and how Tracy says she hates them so much. Well, there's a reason for that, because part of the challenge is that from an accounting perspective, how do you keep track of what you're actually making? And this idea that you can monetize every little aspect of yourself is not only a bit cumbersome as far as I'm concerned, but there's a lot of risk involved. So we won't be touching NFTs today. NFTs, in case you don't know, is non-fungible tokens. We will not touch that. I talked with several accountants before this presentation, and I asked them, okay, what kinds of advice would you give me? They said, just tell people it's an intangible asset, and that's all. Because right now, even the accountants are not willing to kind of touch this with any formalization on the, any software programs or how they're looking at it, because it's still too risky. There's way too much going on there. And the thing that I think that's so surprising to me is, as much as we're interested in digital monetization, I'm still surprised at how much money we're leaving on the table through the advancement of multiple streams of income, for example. Most times when we actually create a song, for example, how can that song bring us additional sources of income? I read a really great article in the Rolling Stone. I have it on my slides, unfortunately, guys, but I'll be sure that you get it. It's an article that I stumbled upon where the writer talked about how he took that song and he broke it up into several different chunks so that portions of it could be marketable according to what was needed. And when you think about commercials, for example, a lot of the popular commercials that are out, they will take just a little sound bite of a song, and that is what is used for that 30-second commercial. So that's another stream of income. So when we're thinking about how we can take that one product that we're offering and turn it into something a lot more expansive, and we can make that product now far reaching, that's important to talk about too. So I just think that's a little soapbox of mine, but I find it really interesting that everyone's ready to jump on digital currency right now, but there are so many other ways that we can manage our existing products to bring additional cash streams and revenue streams for our businesses. Here are some challenges that I think we all face. If you agree with me, just give me an amen in the chats there. Number one of the main challenges that we have is that we don't file our taxes. I'm going to say that again. We don't file our taxes. And I'm going to say that one more time for the choir in the room. We do not file our taxes. Guys and girls, and they and them, this is really hurting us. And it's hurting us for a number of reasons. So we're going to come to that when we're talking about the tax piece. But I'm just going to give you a little soundbite to consider. So in another class, an artist said to me, oh, I don't have to file taxes if I made $600. That's not exactly the rule. The rule is if you make $400 in income, you are expected to file a tax return. So where's the $600 coming from? The $600 comes into play because that client that you made that $600 from, they are not required to report that $600 in the form of a 1099 MISC. So sometimes you may get a 1099, sometimes you may not get a 1099. So we're going to go through that as well, because you really want to make sure that you factor in every single amount of income that has been paid to you. Another challenge that we face as musicians is that we don't really keep good records. This horrifies me because when I've asked people in previous classes, how do you keep track of your expenses? How do you keep track of your income? Someone pulled literally from under their bed 3 big shoe boxes of receipts, bills, statements. It was a nightmare. And this is what they were getting ready to take to the accountant to prepare their tax returns. Well, guess what? That accountant is going to laugh and they're going to say, oh, this is a payday for me. Why? Because they are charging a billable rate just as we should be charging a billable rate for our art. And if simple things like organizing ourselves, organizing our receipts, filing our statements properly so that they are lined up according to month, and then giving that package to the accountant is less money that you're paying, and it's more effective for them to be able to assist you. Another challenge that we have, and here's a biggie, I didn't think it could get any bigger than not filing taxes, but this is one of the number one reasons why people say they don't file taxes. They are afraid of how much tax they will have to pay. So they think that's a good idea when the tax amount is accumulating, is what's happening. But there are ways around that. One of the ways that we can get around that is we can put money aside and save it with each gig that we earn, whether that be a composition that sold money, whether that be a voice recital that we gave, whether that be a class we present to lovely music students. Every time we make an income, we should put that money aside in a savings account so that when it's time for us to make our payments, we're able to do that. So we'll talk about that some more too. And finally, the other challenge that we face is overlooking tax consequences. Now, what do I mean by tax consequences? So one thing I'm referring to is unemployment compensation. So right at the start of quarantine, if we're thankful that we all made it through that horrific part of that. And now we're in the second wave of another of challenges that we're facing for a variety of reasons. One of those has to do with the amount of stimulus money that we all received and how much of us actually received it in hand and how much of us actually will just be able to claim it on our taxes. So there's a lot of interesting things happening with the tax laws right now, which is why I gave the disclaimer that I'm about to give for a second time. I'm not an accountant, and this is why it's important at this time more than ever to have an accountant who can assist you with some of these new tax rules. And they're being made up even as we speak because they're finding that times are changing. How people are being paid is changing. Another consequence that I'm referring to is starting your business. Now, this is a consequence to us because a lot of people don't know. If you formalize your business as a business structure, you are allowed to claim a deduction for that, up to $5,000 even to start your business. But a lot of people don't take advantage of this and it becomes a consequence because what if that $5,000 was the difference that you needed in deduction in order to make your tax penalty less? So understanding what deductions you have available for yourself is essential for that. Another consequence is the interest income. Someone has a question. Hello, Nikki.
Hello. At what point would we be making enough money to need an accountant? Because I feel like I am not making enough money to need any of that quite yet.
I
I'm
think
just
that is
spending my money.
so I think that's a great question, and thank you for asking it. If you are making $600 or more, you need an accountant. And even if you didn't make an income for your art, but you claimed, say, this stimulus money, or you claimed unemployment compensation, or any of the unusual circumstances that we've had over the last couple of years, the last year in particular, I would say it is worth your time to maybe not have an accountant on retainer. You wouldn't need that, but definitely seeking financial advice just for a 30-minute evaluation to be sure that all of your documentation is filled out properly. Your tax returns, if you need to file those, are okay and they're acceptable before you submit them, because this is an unshort time. And then as you continue to make more money, then you would definitely want to consider bringing an accountant, I call it on retainer, where you would see them every quarter as you have to prepare quarterly taxes, for example, or every year as your income increases and you need to file a different tax return. So if you were doing a 1040 EZ right now for your tax returns, but now all of a sudden your income suggests that maybe you need to itemize some things, so you need a 1040, that's a good type of thing that we would bring an accountant in to help us delineate and kind of, confirm that it's the right move for us to have them. Does that answer your question?
Yes. Now I have to
Yay.
go find an accountant.
Well, stay tuned. Stay tuned. We'll be back.
And there are a few questions in the chat, and we also have one person with their hand up. If this is a good time to continue with questions, or should we hold them?
Absolutely. If you can help me with some of them.
Yeah, Diego, would you like to ask your question?
Yes. So,
Hi, Diego.
I heard. Hi. Thank you for talking to us about this. It's really important.
It's my pleasure.
It makes me really stressed out thinking about all this stuff.
No.
But I was wondering so you were saying it's good to do some like prep work on your own before you go to the accountant and organize stuff yourself as you go throughout the year. But how do I do that? I heard Excel or like Google Sheets is a good way to do that, but I don't know how to organize that. Okay.
I'm going to give you that. No stress. This is going to be the best class ever. By the time you're done and you do go to meet that accountant, they're going to say, Diego, why are you in my office? You know everything. It's going to be great.
Okay. Thank you.
We also have the question, how would you suggest going about finding an accountant or a financial advisor? And then another question, is this accountant different from the people who prepare taxes at H&R Block?
Oh, what a great question. Who asked that? Let's see that person's face.
The second question was from Hema. The first one was from Olivia.
They're both really great questions. So tell me the first one again, because I got so motivated by the second question. The first question is, where do we find an accountant?
Yeah, like how would you suggest going about finding an accountant or a financial advisor?
I have a resource for you by the end of this workshop. So don't worry. And it's a free resource. So you guys are going to love me by the time this is done. So I'm going to give you that. I also have a recommendation for, since everyone's asking this question, I'm going to offer this right away. And I'm going to say that there is a software program that I absolutely love. I actually discovered it from a couple of my students who are artists, and they hate QuickBooks. QuickBooks is intimidating to them. They hate, there's an old program called Peachtree Accounting. So I don't want to date myself, but I know a lot of people still use Peachtree Accounting if you're an advanced kind of bookkeeper for a large nonprofit. Peachtree is great for that because from a nonprofit perspective, they can use those programs. But FreshBooks is actually fantastic because it is geared towards gig workers, freelancers, those who receive 1099s, and artists. And I didn't believe it until I tried it myself, and I'm completely hooked. So I've been using FreshBooks accounting software now. It's cloud-based, which means that if I make a mistake, my accountant can also have access to it. and my account, thank you, Madeline. And my accountant can actually have a look at what I'm working on, what my statements are. And now that's going to be a different conversation that I'm going to have with my accountant now, because they're looking at my financial picture in real time and they have a better idea of what's happening. So everything from income reporting to invoice generating to expense reporting, all of that you can put into FreshBooks, and you and your accountant can look at it in real time. It is the most incredible. I'm not getting paid for this, but I'm just telling you how it has affected my quality of life in making things easy. So I want to offer that as well. And to the second question, I don't know if that was your question, Olivia, or not, or someone else's, but
That
they
was my
asked, is it?
question. My name's Hema.
Hi. Hi, Hema.
Um,
How are you? Thank you, Olivia, for your question. I'm going to talk to Hema now. So Hema, H&R Block is a great source to use for regular tax returns, but I have to be honest with you, this is no slam to H&R Block or any of those tax preparing companies that we see every tax time. They can do standard tax returns, but in terms of understanding what the deductions are that you as an artist are entitled to, or you as a craft person. I just saw a couple of people in the chat, and I know that they happen to be business owners who have handcrafted products, for example, or you may sell on Etsy, or you might have a store on Shopify, or you have multiple streams of income that are being offered in a variety of places on the web, or you get monetization from YouTube or social media. I find that the people at H&R Block type places, you kind of have to have conversations with them to be sure that they know what your custom situation is. Because if they don't know and they're not knowledgeable, what will happen is they're just going to do a standard cookie cutter tax return, and you're going to miss out on some of those deductions. And, you know, we're artists, and we're kind of special. Artists are kind of dope. So when we think about all of these special things that we offer to the world, we want to be treated as such when we are doing our taxes. We want to find people on our team that understand our unique situations, our unique positions, and can help us navigate all the different areas of our life. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah. So I guess you would need to kind of have a conversation with someone at H&R Block if you do that, and then, or I mean, I don't know what FreshBooks is, so I guess I'll just have to listen in and see what the other options are.
So you would definitely, yes, you summarized it. You would definitely need to have the conversation with the H&R Block person that you are working with. Be sure, number one, that they understand the current tax laws, because they've changed. Again, in the last 6 months, there have been some add-ons. Every time we change administrations, there's a new tax law that comes about right before we file our taxes. So you want to make sure that any accountant or tax preparer, and that's really the key. H&R Block, and I can't think of the other place that we have here in New York. There's another, Jackson Hewitt, and there's another one. If you do your own taxes, then you know TurboTax you can do online. TurboTax actually updates their software in real time. So as tax laws are coming about and new changes or deductions or exemptions are available, you'll find that TurboTax allows you to see what those things are. But in terms of H&R Block, in terms of those types of tax preparers, the difference is that they are tax preparers. They're not accountants. Accountants are responsible for being able to give their clients the best information to be able to navigate all of these changes. You mentioned something about FreshBooks. What FreshBooks will do is it will kind of teach you to do your own record keeping in a more efficient way. So when you have conversations with that accountant, even with that tax preparer, there's going to be a lot of things you're going to learn just by using the FreshBooks software or QuickBooks software, whichever one you choose. Does that answer your question?
Yes. Thank you.
And I'm just going to add one more thing, since it has come up now 3 times. So here's my big secret. This is my big free advice to you. I want you to write this down. The SCORE organization, SCORE, SCORE.org. SCORE is an acronym for Service Corporation of Retired Executives. And they are a volunteer-based organization through the SBA, the Small Business Administration. Thank you, Madeline. Madeline posted the web site address. This is a consortium of experts in a variety of fields who can offer or are willing to offer free advice on a volunteer basis. So each state requires something different in terms of setting up an appointment with them, but they don't charge you anything. These are people who are giving back to their communities through this volunteer effort. So you will find, I know here in New York, they're amazing. Every chapter, because there's multiple different, yay, Diego, I'm glad to see. That's so cool. That means that that's taken off a little bit of stress. The SCORE office it consists of marketing people, accountants, lawyers. So if you need help setting up your business, here in New York, there are artists. So if you have questions about contracts or royalties or songwriting information or record deals or companies, like you can contact the SCORE office to find out which particular chapter has which particular volunteers. They don't all have the same types of volunteers, but I think that you will find across the board, you'll always find lawyers, you'll always find accountants, you'll always find marketing experts who volunteer on an appointment basis. And you just have to get on the calendar and ask these questions. Yay? Awesome. Does someone else have a question?
There are a couple of other questions in the chat. Louisa, would you like to ask yours?
Yeah, sure. Hi. Thank you so much for all the information. It's just this, I am an international student. So I basically don't even know all the terms of the forms you're mentioning. Do all these apply the same to, like, I literally have no idea. Like, I know what you're talking about, but I have at the same time no idea what you're talking about. Do you know, like, all of these technically apply to us? Do you know, like, how do we kind of, like, international students go with, like, these, like, taxes? I know I received a form saying that I need to fill taxes, and that's all I know. So
here's what I can answer. You just made the sweat on my neck just drip right down, because I'm going, I don't know international tax anything, but here's what I do know. What I know is that when I've made an income outside of the US in various parts of the world, I'm still expected to pay tax on that here because I am a US citizen. So my advice to you would be to check with your individual. Where are you from, by the way?
I am from Colombia, but yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
No,
I would check.
I didn't say. Sorry.
Okay, got it. So I would check with your specific tax laws and find out what that looks like. Because if you are being given a 1099 or a W-2 here in the US, I'm pretty sure there's something you're going to have to do with that. So you don't want to sit on it. And there's probably going to be extra steps for you, because I don't know if you need to report that income in Colombia as well as here in the US. But you know where I'm going to go. I'm going to say, this is a question for the accountant. And what you want is so someone just said maybe the Colombian embassy. I didn't see the whole thing. Let me just go back to it. They said maybe the Colombian embassy could help. Yes, it's possible that they could help. And where they could possibly help, that's actually a really good point. They might be able to recommend you to someone who could give you that kind of advice or guidance about someone to talk to here in the US while you're here.
All right, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And we have a hand up. June, did you have something to add to that or another question?
Oh yeah, I was just gonna maybe mention small things, just like the smallest tingy bits that I know. So basically, if you're an international student, the whole tax situation is actually more so like out here in the US, it's like more so tied to your visa situation. So for F1, you have to file state and federal taxes, but you don't, like file taxes like employment taxes, right? And that's why the work hour is set up for international students to not like work over more than 20 hours like with your F1 visa, because like that is just like then after that it has to kind of like a file separately, and you cannot do that with the F1 visa status.
Okay.
You have to start probably, but like once you graduate, for example, if you go on an H1 visa, if you get hired by a company and like they sponsor your visa, then you have to file employment taxes. Or if you become green card holder, then you have to file like the taxes the same way you do as the US citizen.
This is great information. I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name.
Jen.
Hi, Jen.
Hi.
This was great. Can I ask you, how current is this information that you're offering? Is it like last couple of months? Is it last 6 months? Last year?
I could double check. I mean, like I file taxes every year, the state and like a federal tax. I think that's just kind of given. It's how it has been with the F1 visa.
So this
And
is what you knew from the previous tax year.
yeah, basically.
Okay, awesome. Awesome. So the only reason why I was asking that is because it sounds like current information. I would always just caution everyone on this call to be sure that on top of this great information that Jen just offered, remember that there's some new tax laws that just emerged over the last 3 months, which is why I asked. So you want to be sure that you double check those as well, which is why I'm going to go back to what Jen said, as well as what the person said in chat about checking the embassy. I'm not so sure how helpful the embassy will be, but in terms of a referral contact or where you can go, I think both of those, Jen's information and what was in chat, can be really helpful.
Yeah. I mean,
No, it's okay. It's all good. No, it's just that I know how my thing works in my country. Like I think I have that very clear. And I have someone there that helps me out with the taxes there. But I'm like super confused what I need to report in here because I mean, we can just work for school. We cannot work anywhere else, at least with students. Like we can
that you don't have to file separately. That one. Yeah.
Got it. So the thing I will suggest is that SCORE would be a good resource for you because they can recommend someone to you who specializes, an accountant who specializes in both domestic as well as international tax understanding. And again, that would be free. So you can definitely, I would definitely reach out to the SCORE location. What they were doing here in New York is they were assigning you to a branch based on where you lived here in the city. You could go to any place, any of the boroughs, but they were trying to assign as of the last year because they were limited in staffing. So just double check, call any SCORE office in your area. There's a phone number usually, and you can reach out to them. I know a lot of them are working from home, so they may tell you to send an email. And then once you send your inquiry, somebody will get back to you.
Thank you so much.
This person is asking, can you speak to the process, categorization, and benefits of MBE, WBE, EBE, and DBE designations? Can they all apply to musician business entities? Hi, Nick. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing great. Nick, can you give me more details about what you're trying to find out? That's a loaded question.
Yeah, I know that, there's like minority business entities and women owned entities, like what's the E? The D is like disadvantaged and E is like emerging.
Yes.
And I wasn't, I've heard of them. I, of course could go Google it and look it up, but we're in this class and I was curious if you knew anything about those types of things. I know that like, certain businesses can be like categorized in a specific way for purposes of like grants, and I wasn't really sure how that applies to taxes or anything like that. But I thought I'd mention it, see if you knew anything about it. It's something that was discussed. And I'm part of an Indian nation, and I've been sort of speaking with them about what it would take for me to get like tribal status through a business through them, which is super complicated, and I might not just end up doing it at all. And I'm not really sure. It's like,
Don't give up.
yeah, but yeah, no, I just thought I'd ask the question to see if it's something that's ever come up in your world at all.
It does come up in my world, and so I can't really address it from a California perspective, other than to say in each state, what I do know that is consistent is that you have to work with the state and sometimes the city level to be designated in order to be able to bid on the contracts that come from those particular designations. And usually it's for city work. What, in my experience, excuse me, they don't typically call on artists, for example, once you have the designation to perform at the mayor's ball, for example. However, that designation can work to your advantage in the school system when you are trying to apply for a contract with the school to come in and teach inclusiveness-based workshops, or if you are offering a product that is an extension of your business that enhances that inclusiveness matter as it specifies with your designation. So I would start definitely with your city level as well as with your state level, because those are the places that would give that designation. There's a process that you would apply for. I know that one of those would include that you need what's called a DUNS number. DUNS, D-U-N-S, that is short for Dun and Bradstreet. And it is also sometimes referred to at the state and city level as a vendor ID. So that is essential to getting any of the U.S. Parks and Recreation, which is a federal agency. You have to have a DUNS number in order to do any performance-based related activities or any artistic related activities in order for them to pay you. Thank you, Madeline. You have to have the DUNS number registration. And then at the city level, this is where they would ask you for that DUNS number so that they could give you a vendor ID at the local level. Does that answer some of your question?
Yeah, no, thank you so much.
It's my pleasure. Don't give up. It's a hard pill to swallow, Nick. I saw you swallowing there, but the truth of the matter is that if it's worth your time, if it's worth your energy, and if it's something that's going to bring good into the world, you should definitely not give up on that. I think I see another question, maybe. Let's see.
We had one a
Billy.
little while ago that we
Okay.
skipped over, which is from Brent asking, what are your thoughts on gig economy laws? How do they apply to artists? And I know this is probably different for New York and California.
Yes. Yes. Who did it come from?
This is from Brent.
Hi, Brent. How are you?
Hi, Shelby. How are you?
I'm doing great.
I gotta say,
I can't.
oh, no, I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, after you. Après vous.
Okay. As a former bass baritone singer in my high school choir, it's really, really nice to talk to you.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. Fellow singer.
Hey,
Are there any more singers on the call too?
I'm sure everybody here sings in some capacity.
We have
Oh,
a lot of
that's
singers
awesome.
in this class, yeah.
See, I could feel the love when I joined the call. That's awesome. That's awesome. So as far as the gig related economy and all of that stuff, I can't really speak to that, Brent, because it's so different. I'm not even actually sure about California's gig economy. I have no idea what you guys are doing out there. I know here there's so much happening here in the city right now, as we are trying to resurrect ourselves from that awful time. There's so much. We just got a new mayor, so I'm not quite sure how to address the gig economy question that you have. But if you give me a very specific question, what I will do is after, if you just want to know general information, then I can do some digging for you and I will provide the answer to Madeline and Jen. And or Jen. You guys can tell me which one to reach out to.
Thank you. Thank you, Shelby.
And I think, Brent,
Pleasure.
a little bit later in the semester, we're having visiting artist Sydney Hobson, who is going to talk about a little bit about like the Musicians Union. And I think he will be able to elaborate on this a bit more as well.
Wow, this was a good round of questions, wasn't it, Madeline? Like, wow, they asked some really, really great questions. Thank you guys for that.
Sorry, we have
Another
one more hand that just came up. Should we save it or?
No, go for it.
Okay, I was like wondering if I should talk about this or not. So I got married very young, and so I actually file my taxes jointly with my spouse. And we're both musicians and artists, and we have multiple income streams, including a Shopify shop. So I usually try to cover the taxes. She is not amazing at reporting expenses to me. Do you have any advice about how I can try to track that? Like I can keep better track of like expenses on behalf of my spouse?
So I want to, is it Simeon or Simon?
Simeon. Yeah.
Simeon, I like the way, I love that name. So I, first of all, want to applaud you for not throwing your spouse under the bus. Nice job.
She makes more money than me, so I can't. So
yes, I get it. So I want to thank you for being so gentle just there, because combining two musicians in the same space as it relates to business related matters can be a very interesting experience. What I would suggest is that you do a couple of things. Number one, I think you should encourage her to check out FreshBooks first, separate from you, because we already know that you're managing things. But if you can get her buy-in to this program being user-friendly, that might actually save you from trying to convince her of that. And you know, even the person who kicks and screams at managing a budget, I have yet to see anyone feel this way about this software. It really is kind of foolproof. The second thing that I would suggest, and this is for anyone, whether you are in a partnership called marriage or you are in a business partnership, I think it's important to know what each person's style is for saving money, for investing money, for paying bills. Like, what is the process? So if she's not really good at it, like, why isn't she good at it? Maybe it's because your process is not really her process. You might be more cerebral about things and she might be more organically visual, where she has to see everything on a vision board. And
well, I mean, we balance each other out really well because
of course,
I'm like afraid to do necessary business expenses, and she is willing to do those because I'm super stressed out about this stuff. But yeah, anyways, I gotta find a better solution than what we did this last month, which was just writing a big list on the wall.
That's not gonna work. That's probably not gonna work. You're gonna pull your hair out after a while. You've got great hair there. I wouldn't suggest that you keep writing it on the wall there. I think there needs to be an honest conversation. And you just said something really crucial. So in addition to being musicians, that means 2 revenue streams. You also talked about having a Shopify store. That's a 3rd revenue stream. I would assume that as musicians, you have multiple streams because maybe you're into publishing or you're copyright, you're doing songwriting, you might be teaching. Those are all individual streams of income. And so your businesses have gone beyond just a simplified process. And so now it's important to kind of figure out how you need to get on the same page. So I would definitely start with the FreshBooks, have her look at it, see if there's anything about it that calls to her and she likes, and maybe that's another way to kind of divide up the responsibility, is by reporting it that way. Yeah.
Yeah, thank
Okay,
you.
great.
I don't know if I should just let it But that was really good advice, and I'll definitely look into it. I've already saved the FreshBooks site, and I will look at it as soon as I get out of this class.
You said, I don't know if I should let it be. You mean you
No,
have
I mean
another
like
question?
the awkward Zoom silence is what I was saying.
Oh, no, it's okay. I was just giving you a moment to process everything. And if you think of another question, just ask. Awesome. The last thing I just wanted to share with everyone.
I think you got muted, Shelby.
Oh, I'm sorry about that. Can you hear me now? Yay. Okay, so another challenge or consequence that we all seem to have is mixing our W-2s and 1099 statements and placing them on the wrong portion of our tax returns. So sometimes this actually comes from how we receive the document. So I just want to kind of touch on that as a consequence, because if we're reporting on the tax return income in areas where it shouldn't be reported, such as other income versus non-compensation income on the tax return, that could actually create more tax penalty for you when you're done filling out your tax return. So I'll expand on that just a little bit more, but it is a consequence. Just one second. So here are the things I want you to know in terms of what you need for your business essentials. Number one, you need to determine what you need to keep track of. You need to determine what things you need to keep track of your money, your expenses, and your income. Now, for some people, this means keeping the shoebox. So if you want to keep a shoebox, here's what I recommend. I recommend that you keep the shoebox, you throw the receipts in it, just the receipts, and then every month you clear them out. So I'm thinking of my friend Simeon here. That could be a very lovely affair over some dinner where the two of you are going through that box of receipts that you've accumulated, and you want to designate the receipts according to what they are. So if it's if they're all food related receipts, you want to put food together and paper clip it. If it's all gas expenses, then put those together. You don't want to let these receipts in these boxes pile up, because it will be so difficult at the end of the year when you're scrambling around trying to prepare your tax return and trying to figure out what to itemize. So you need to figure out what you need. What is it that your personal business need is for keeping track of that money and expenses? You should also think about how you are organizing your contracts, any royalty agreements that you have. Like, where do you keep these things? You know, I'm a big fan of the old-fashioned filing system called file folders. I get a bunch of file folders and I just write the names of them on the top, and I put the folders together that way. I also love doing things online. I'm very into online business and reporting. However, there's nothing like having those documents in your hand that you can then hand to, say, an accountant or hand to your attorney to be able to review. And as evidenced by today, sometimes the Wi-Fi crashes and then you don't have a paper copy and you're kicking yourself. Yes, a binder, Gemma, is a great idea. I love the concept of binders because you can customize those according to how you need them. But it's important, just at the very bare minimum, you want to have some type of recording and filing system to stay organized. And also, how are you keeping track of your purchases? So this is a very big one when it comes down to deductions, for example. I purchase everything with a card. And the reason why I purchase everything with the card is because there's always a written evidence that now exists that that purchase was made. It's my way to navigate. If I can't find a receipt, I can always go back to my bank statement and look at that card transaction. And so it's a really great way to keep up with things that you have. Something that the banks allow you to do on many banks' checking accounts, when the transaction posts, you can actually go into that transaction you can drill into it, like, click on it, and it will allow you to put a description. What I would advise that you do is put the description of what that's for, because 3 months from now, when you're trying to figure out what was $3.76, and you really need that $3.76 to justify a deduction, this is a great way to, go back in really quickly and say, oh, this was for Staples for printing. The other thing I want to give you something to think about with is, where do you put your bank statements if you receive them by standard mail? So I alluded to this earlier. Oftentimes when we get those bank statements, if you're still getting mail, you just throw them off to the side and you say, oh, I'll get it later. The problem with that is that, is it better to have a dedicated business card and not use personal cards for expenses? Yes, Tara, it is definitely better. I wouldn't say it's better. I think designation is the key, although we are going to talk about the business side of separating your business finances from your personal. If there is any reason why you are mixing the two at this time, that is an adamant hard stop I'm going to recommend, because that can get really messy for you as an artist, and it can expose you to a lot more penalties. So I would definitely recommend that you keep your businesses separate, your business and your personal finance separate. But with that being said, when you make a purchase, it depends on what your designation is to determine if you should do a personal card to charge versus a business. Now, if you are a sole proprietor, then you can use a business card or a personal card. It doesn't matter which one you use, because all you're filing is a Schedule C on the tax return that reports your business income. So you're free to use both. If you are a corporation and you've established articles of incorporation, my suggestion would be to use a business card in order to be able to track that spending, because then it's being filtered through a business account, and that all makes sense in the scheme of, record keeping purposes. That's a great question.
We have another question in the chat.
Yes, I'm listening.
Margot, do you want to read that, or should I?
We did. I was just earlier you had
Hi,
mentioned.
Margot.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
Earlier you had mentioned that by the time you're making at least $600 a year, it's time to look for an accountant. Does that also overlap with the timeline for creating a business account for banking?
That's an awesome question. Let me make one distinction. So it's $600, period. So if you made $600 3 times, you definitely need to consider how you're going to file those taxes, and maybe having a conversation with an accountant once as a consultation could be beneficial to you, especially if the money came from a variety of sources in terms of what to do with that. And your second question, just repeat it to me again.
Just like, what point should we be making a business bank account? I just started selling scores for the first time last month.
Oh,
so I've made $50, but that's like the most I've ever made. So I haven't been using, it's all been my personal account because I just got Venmoed a couple times.
Okay, so here's where I'm going to get a little sentimental. First of all, Margot, that is amazing. Congratulations. I hope you got your work copywritten.
I don't know what that is.
Oh.
The copyright.
Oh, I misunderstood you. No, it's not copywritten. It should have been. It's a little zine I made with my friend. Okay.
Oh.
No.
I'm not going to sing any floods. So the first thing I'm going to say is any business income that you make warrants a business account. You don't want to mix those funds. So you need a business account now. You don't want to put that money in your personal, because that will subject you to an audit. Maybe not now, but definitely down in the future. If that composition makes you kudos of money, then guess what? The IRS is going to come calling for dinner. So we don't want that to happen. We want you to be able to designate where that money should go, and it should go into a business account. But don't worry, there are some banks that will charge a minimum balance, but there's a lot of online banks now where there's no minimum balance requirement and no fees associated with it. So there's ways to work around that. One particular bank that's really good that I like is called NBKC. Anyone ever heard of that? All of you West Coast fans there. They are an online bank. I have to tell you, I must say, I truly regret not separating my business and personal finances. Jen! Okay, so yes, absolutely. NBKC is actually, yes?
I have a question like immediately relevant. So for the business account, that only counts as like gigs, right? You would open that up for gigs, not for like just a regular job. Like I have like a teaching job where I have a contract, but that doesn't apply, does it?
Is it a teaching job connected to your art?
Yes.
So yeah, that's part of your business income. It should definitely go to a business account. Unless you are working as a teacher, as a salaried employee, that is the difference. If they are paying you through a 1099 statement, or if you are on a project-based accounting records with them, like a contract, as you mentioned, then that is business income. Does that make sense?
I think I'm going to need a financial advisor immediately because
Don't panic, don't freak out. It's a simple designation. It's a simple account opening process, but you definitely need to separate your business income from your personal income. Personal income, as I said, if we use the teacher example, that's a really great example because if you were hired to be an employee, that is personal income. But if you are working as a gig worker or a freelance artist, or if it's a residency, or if you are teaching orchestra for a certain number of weeks, or whatever that contract is, and it supports what you're also doing as an artist to earn a living as an artist, that should be separated from any personal income that you are incurring. Here's an example of personal income. If you happen to do Uber Eats delivery or DoorDash on the side, that could contribute to your personal income. But anything related to your art should be designated as business income and therefore should be separated. In a bank, I'm saying.
Sorry to interrupt, Shelby.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm just very confused because I feel like I've tried to do this. I bank with Schools First Federal Credit Union, which I like my bank a lot. I don't know if it's possible to make another account with I guess I just still don't understand because I feel like I've attempted this before and I feel like it costs money to make another account.
I don't know where you banked, so I can't answer to what they mentioned to you. But here's what I would like to offer everyone in this class. You are allowed to have multiple accounts. And in fact, I always advise it. First of all, you need an account to have your tax payments saved. So every time you work a gig, you should be putting aside a percentage of whatever that is. I always advise, just to be safe, that you should at least have a minimum of 1/3 to 1/2 of whatever you made at that gig, so that you can actually keep it in a savings account. And when it's time to make tax payments, you know, as a gig worker, as a 1099 worker, they don't take taxes out. So if your gig was for $500, then what they are assessing you is just what they're going to give you is just that $500 with no Social Security, no Medicare, and no taxes taken out at all. You are responsible for that. So how do you do that? Well, you need to have a savings account to be able to take some of that 500, at least a third to a half, and put that aside and not touch it. That should go in a savings account. That's not for your vacations or your trips. So that's one account you need. The other account can be a business checking account. Business checking accounts, there are an unlimited number of transactions. Here's something that a lot of artists don't know. Your savings account is not always the best account for you to have because you are limited to the number of transactions that you can conduct. Transactions meaning deposits and or withdrawals over the course of every month. That limit in most banks' cases is 6. So if you exceed that number of withdrawals and you're doing it a couple of months, some banks will actually charge you a penalty for that on your bank statement. They won't tell you, but if you look at your bank statements and you're trying to figure out what is this fee, that's what it's for. Some banks won't actually give you any notification. They will just suddenly take that savings account and convert it to a checking account, and you thought you were earning interest, but you are no longer earning interest. The reason why they do that is because that is a governmental regulation that you cannot treat your savings account like a checking account. So with that being said, a business checking account is ideal. If you have a personal account, a personal checking and a personal savings would be ideal for you as well. Now, as musicians, as artists, you know, we don't always have income to spread our money everywhere. So there's some other alternatives. You can definitely, PayPal allows you to have one personal and one business account. They are not a bank, but in terms of situations where we're referring to now, where maybe you're selling online or you're offering your services and you need to be paid for those things, they do allow you the separation of multiple accounts, but by email designation. So that's the only caveat there. You have to have 2 separate email addresses, one for your personal account with them and one for your business. They also send out a statement at the end of the year with any reported earnings for that business account. So it is definitely recognized as an option for you. I was starting to mention NBKC. That bank is an online business bank. I have to be completely honest with you, the process for setting up that business account, it was a little complicated. And honestly, being the touchy New Yorker that I am about business things, I didn't really understand why it took so long to set the account up. I don't know if they were short-staffed at the time that I did it, but what I have to tell you is the account runs pretty well. It synchronizes to all of my other platforms where I'm selling things online. In terms of getting wire transfers and direct deposits, it's great for that as well. So I definitely recommend that you check out NBKC. That would be one bank. Another bank that I wanted to recommend to you guys is Union Bank. I understand that's a West Coast bank. Is that true? Anyone know? Okay, so we're gonna look it up, unionbank.com. And another bank that specializes in an online free account for business. And they have, according to what I researched, they had over 300 branches in California. So free services, you know, in terms of no fees and no minimum monthly balance requirement, because that's the other thing. Yeah, there are definitely some in Valencia. So I thought that was great because when you're choosing a business bank, you want to be sure, especially depending on how much or how little income you're making to start. You don't want any fees. You don't want a minimum balance requirement. That means that the bank is requiring you to keep a certain dollar amount in your account in order to substantiate why they're giving you that account. If you don't meet that minimum balance amount, then they charge you $15 to sometimes $35 a month. But Union Bank doesn't seem to do that. I know from experience, NBKC doesn't do that. You just need to have at least $50 to $100 to open the account over a 30-day window. So it's pretty flexible. I told you about PayPal. Another one that people don't really think about is Discover Bank. They actually have a really great banking service online, pretty reputable. All of these banks are backed by FDIC insurance, which means that if there's any problem, you are insured or guaranteed with your money up to $250,000. So definitely Discover. And another one that everyone's talking about right now is Bluevine. I don't know much about this one, but what appealed to me about their services is that it's free as well. It's an online model, and just to be clear, Madeline, is Discover Bank. So Discover is the credit, but then they have another one, I guess, that I think it's discoverbank.com. So people can check that one out too. And Bluevine. Bluevine is free with no fees assessed as well. I'm recognizing the time, by the way. I don't know how we're doing with time, Jen and Madeline.
We have about 15 minutes left.
Oh, no. I also want to say, so I know you guys have heard of one of the big guys, Chase. Chase Banking is pretty reputable across the country. I hope there are no Chase users on here. I don't really recommend Chase. And the reason why I don't recommend them as like your startup business idea is because you have to keep for their basic checking a minimum of $2,000, or they assess you a $15 fee every month. Do you know how many cups of ramen noodles I could buy for $15? Why would I want to give that to Chase? So I don't recommend, if you don't have that kind of money to give, or if you're not making $2,000 at least to keep in the account as your average monthly balance, I don't recommend that you look at things like Chase or Bank of America. There is one other one, however, Capital One. I don't know if you guys have Capital One there. Simeon, you have a credit card with Chase. So I didn't see what that rest of it was, but I just want to say to you, no. So that's funny. I was going to say, if you have a credit card product with Chase, keep it, hang on to it, because Chase is actually one of the credit accelerators for both your business as well as your personal life. So if you have a Chase credit card, it's kind of like an accelerator to maintaining your good credit and even elevating it. It's a really great card to have. But I was about to ask about Capital One. I don't know if you guys have Capital One there, but what I love about Capital One is that they have the feature called sub accounts. So you can open up one main business account and then, one main personal account, and then you can actually open up an additional sub account where you can move money back and forth. Yeah, it's fantastic. It's fantastic. There was another, I'm responding to someone I just saw in the chat who said, yeah, I love sub accounts. I love them too, because oftentimes having multiple bank accounts seems a little overwhelming. And if you are at the phase of your music career where you are working as a sole proprietor, you're working as a gig artist or a freelancer, and you're not making a lot of money, having to separate everything is a little bit daunting. So if you can find a bank with a sub account, that's always a great idea. And Capital One online, their Capital One 360 account, you can, that's an online specific account. So even if they don't have a branch or 100 in California, you can definitely use their services online, and that's free. No fees assessed whatsoever. I love the Capital One 360 account. I don't know if there are any parents, but in my bio, I said how I shouted out my 15-year-old. I don't know if you could believe that, Jen, but my son is 15 and he just he just got accepted into NYU's Future Filmmakers program. So he just went off with I'm saying this because he has had a Capital One account since he was 8. And he just opened up a second sub account because he said, oh, Mom, now I've got to put my film money in a different account. So, I mean, yeah, Jen knows my son. She knows that he means everything to me. And so now he's on this path where he's at this phase too. And he's trying to figure out, do I move my money here or do I keep it here? And so yeah, Capital One is great for that. If you are a parent and you're looking for a way to teach your children money management, that's always a good place to go to for the Capital One account. I know we have 15 minutes, but I saw some other questions in the chat. Let's see how
We also have Olivia has her hand up. Do you want to ask your question, Olivia?
Hi, Olivia.
Yeah, hi, Shelby. My question was, do you need to establish yourself as a business entity before opening a business bank account?
I love that question. See, we saved the question that we needed to all hear, Olivia. That's what we were doing. So yes, you do need to have a few things. So I need you to write this down. Number one, you need at least $100 to open up your account. Number two, you need to use your social security number. However, I do not recommend that you give your social security number away. When you use your social security number for things like banking, for things like online access to things, you are opening yourself up to a variety of possible issues, such as credit fraud, such as challenges or difficulties with trying to establish your credit. So when you're doing business and you're giving out your social security number, that's not really a good idea for that purpose. What the IRS will allow you to do is obtain an EIN number. EIN is the same as what the college has to establish it as a college, or what an employer would give you that you would see on your W-2 statements. It stands for Employer Identification Number. Here's a little secret that a lot of people don't know. So EIN numbers and social security numbers are exactly the same number of digits. The difference is that social security numbers have 3 numbers with a hyphen, 2 numbers with a hyphen, and then the last numbers after that. Whereas with an EIN number, it has the first 2 numbers, a hyphen, and then the rest of the numbers. So sometimes people say, oh, I don't need it because no one will know if I'm using my social or my EIN. Right now, we are in the technological world of computer hacking. So this is another way of safeguarding your social security number, which is also tied into your personal retirement benefits, and why I'm suggesting that you don't use your social for business purposes. I suggest that you get an EIN number. So how do you do that? Well, there's a couple of ways. One, you can obtain what's called an SS4 form from irs.gov, but there's an even easier way. Just go to irs.gov and apply for an EIN. Now, as a sole proprietorship, which is what we all are as freelancers until we formally establish ourselves as a business, what you will they will ask you is, are you sure you want to do this? The answer is yes. You're looking for an EIN to set up your business. And I'm sure you guys have probably had this, but let me just say a little statement here and say that I'm Shelby Banks. I have something called the Business Savvy Artist Series. So if I say Shelby Banks doing business as the Business Savvy Artist Series, I technically would need to register that officially. The only way that the IRS acknowledges you as a sole proprietor is if you call your business Shelby Banks or whatever your name is. Any alteration to your first and last name, you are now a DBA, which stands for doing business as. And then again, another reason to talk with the SCORE office about assistance, because at that point, if you're using a different name that you're operating under, you definitely want to have an EIN number to do that. So you need $100 to open your account. You need your EIN number, or if you are comfortable using your social, you can use your social. And if you have this, either a business license, so as a sole proprietorship, you are recognized by the IRS automatically as a sole proprietorship, whether you go and obtain a business license or not. It's always to your advantage to set up a business license. And this is what the bank is going to ask you for. So the bank will ask you for a proof of your business license, as well as your EIN number and your deposit. If you are an LLC or an S Corp or a C Corp or an LLP, then you would bring your articles of incorporation, your EIN number, and your deposit to set up that account if you're doing it at a branch. If you're doing it online, they'll ask you to upload confirmation of those documents. The other thing I want to say about the IRS EIN number, which you can do online, it's great because once you actually fill out all the questions that they ask you, what I recommend, guys, is that you go to the SS4 form online and look at the questions first and fill them in, and then go online and apply. So there's no surprises, because on the online system, if you mess anything up, there may be something to delay your application. So just have a look at the SS4 form first. And then once you apply for the EIN number, right then and there, they will generate an EIN number that you can have immediately. And they will give you an upload to the IRS verification letter. This letter is like gold. So you don't want to delete it. You want to make sure you still have it for other business related purposes. As you're growing in your business, you'll need that IRS verification letter. And that's pretty much it when you're opening up an account. You just need those three things: the deposit, the EIN or social, and the business license, articles of incorporation. Oh, and your ID. And it has to be a government issued ID.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Does that mean you're sorry to jump in. So when you do that, does that like still mean you're a sole proprietor, or are you like switching, like are you incorporating yourself, or is that kind of like a whole different thing?
With the EIN number?
Well, just like when you're setting up a business account, like you're still a sole proprietor.
You are still a sole proprietor until you officially file with the state. So the bank, what the bank business is completely different from what the state requirements are. That's actually a really good question, because I'm also going to add to that, just because you get an EIN number, from the IRS, that also does not officiate you as a business. So I've heard artists say, oh, I got my EIN number, I'm established. No, you're not. You just got a tax ID number from the IRS to operate as a DBA. So what really formalizes that business relationship is when you either file articles of incorporation, or if you're a nonprofit, going through the process to become a nonprofit, which starts with articles of incorporation. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Great.
And then my question is kind of similar to like Michael's that he just asked in the chat about like the difference, like, do we need to be an LLC? Like, I know you were talking about there's like benefits, like when you're filing, if you're like incorporated. So I'm assuming you mean like LLC, and like what is the process for doing that, and like how much does it cost?
Jen, Madeline, I need to come back.
I know, we need to bring you back.
Yeah.
That's a whole nother conversation. I would love to come back, but that
would be great.
So yeah, the problem with your question, there's no problem with your question. It was a great question, but the challenge is that you can't talk about that in 30 seconds or less, because each entity has benefits and consequences. So some people find that LLC is the way to go. I have to tell you, I have 3 businesses and all of them are LLCs. They work for me. What I like about having an official corporate structure, this is something I can talk about, is that having an official structure that is separate and apart from you as the individual offers a level of protection that sole proprietorship does not. So I don't know how many people on this call have a partner or spouse, like Simeon very graciously shared with us. But let's just use that situation for just a second. So you both are working as a sole proprietorship, or you're working as a general partnership. General partnership is kind of like a sole proprietorship, except it's two people instead of one, which is why I'm lumping them together. It typically does not require an official documentation or guideline. You just need an operating agreement of how you exist, and poof, you're done. I don't recommend either of them. And the reason for that is because if someone ever wants to enter into litigation with you for any reason, they are coming after your assets. And they are not just coming after your personal assets, but if you have a partner, and depending on whatever that lawsuit is or whatever that court situation is, whatever they need to put a lien on or to look into, that could include or extend to the partnerships that you have or the spousal situation that you have. So I don't ever recommend that you remain. If you're making a lot of money, so for example, Campbell and Carr, which is one of my businesses, it's a cultural apothecary where I make handcrafted teas. I do not want someone to come after me and my 15-year-old filmmaker and his little wages that he's just starting to get from his clients. I'm kidding about that because he's my child. But let's say I had a spouse and we were working together in this business. It would be very dangerous of me to have that. There would be no protection, no insurances afforded. And then also from a tax perspective, depending on how much income you're making, you might actually work out better in a different, from a different taxation perspective if you were an S Corp or an LLC. And that's why I said this is a loaded conversation. But
yeah, totally.
Yeah, so that's it in a nutshell. LLC, LLP, S Corp, or C Corp, those are the essential ones versus the sole proprietorship or the general partnership.
Cool, thank you.
You're welcome. It's a great question.
So we're at the end of the time, but I would love to find a way to bring you back if that's at all possible.
Yeah, I would love to come back. This was so fun. And I love the questions that everyone asked. I think that they were beneficial. I'm hoping that this information was beneficial. And we only got to slide 4. So if you saw what I was actually working with, it's like, oh no. But yeah, these are really great conversations. I think if a lot more musicians got together and had these types of dialogues, there's a lot of information to share and a lot of hope to have and less stress about how we're running, how we're in the business of our art, I should say. So yeah. Thank you, Madeline. And thank you, Jen, for inviting me. And thank you to all of you for being a part of this.